I keep forgetting. But to for the recording, I want to just recap that we are discussing development operations, just to get a feel for the nuances of this role, given that it's a bit of a complicated role. Expectations for this role, depending on where you land, can widely vary. Some employers may be looking for a DevOps engineer who is more experienced with the development side. Some employers may look for a DevOps engineer who's more experienced with the operational side. It really boils down to the needs of an organization at that point in time. So it's a highly flexible role. It's a little more challenging to articulate your skill set to a potential employer, to prove your capabilities. But in the end, I ultimately think it is more rewarding. Yes, DevOps engineers are expected to know how to do both, and that might mean that it takes more time to develop both skill sets. And that might also come with some negative stereotypes, false assumptions, or limiting beliefs. Like DevOps engineers can't develop software as well as a dedicated software engineer, or that they can't operate software as well as a dedicated systems administrator. But the hidden truth is, by simultaneously learning both the development and operational side of programming, you are on a path to being more experienced in the long run, having a more nuanced understanding of the relationship between development and operations, as opposed to your typical software engineer who might have interests only in software engineering. So he tries to maybe deploy a new Kubernetes cluster, but he has no idea how. So he has to constantly reach out to other teams on Slack to receive guidance for that. Whereas in a DevOps role, you have the knowledge and the skill set to be able to navigate the architecture of an organization a little more fluidly. So what it boils down to is you all are on this course, on this path towards a job with a very high potential, but with a lot of challenges along the way. And I just wanted to be very real about that, lay down those foundations and expectations so that you know exactly what you're getting into. And one of the other benefits is by developing both skill sets simultaneously, you may find that at the end of the curriculum, when you're ready to go start looking for work, that you have more options. You don't have to solely apply for a DevOps position. You might find that there's a system administration role that piques your interest, or a software engineering role that grabs your attention. So I think that's the benefit of going down this path. So this is another reason why I think it's important to give regular feedback, more so for this curriculum than the regular full stack class, because if you feel like you're lacking in one side versus the other, that feedback form is a perfect way to let us know, hey, we need to cover this area a little more. So ultimately, we want to help you guys navigate what is known as the wall of confusion, which really is just a product of the ambiguity behind a discipline that is really simultaneously two disciplines at once. How Google defines DevOps from their own SRE handbooks is that DevOps is a loose set of practices, guidelines, and culture designed to break down silos in IT development, operations, networking, and security. And so the possibilities really are endless. When it comes time to start looking for work, you'll find that there are magnitudes of variations upon which you can really start diving into. And so it's also going to maybe require a little bit of extra initiative to find an area where you want to specialize. I'll actually be giving a course later on in this curriculum, just like I did with the last course, where I go over some of the other disciplines in DevOps. Because when you're studying DevOps as a philosophy, it's opening up a career path to titles such as site reliability engineering, DevSecOps engineering, platform engineering, cloud engineering. These titles are widely available, and they're usually catered to the needs of an organization in a specific point in time. So again, with all of that said, there is the extra amount of work that you're going to have to do in advocating for yourself as a DevOps engineer. A little more so than a typical software engineering role, it's going to require you to develop your communication skills, your service skills, your conflict resolution, your leadership skills, interpersonal skills, your presentation and reporting skills. These are the things that you will need to do to be able to simultaneously support developers and operators. Any questions so far? I hope I haven't deterred anybody from this path, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Just wondering where this PowerPoint is saved as? Like where is saved for this thing you mentioned, you'll share this one to us.
Sorry, what was the question?
Where this PowerPoint is saved, is there a way that I can download this?
Yeah, no, not yet, but that's a good call. I'll make these PowerPoints available for everyone, and yeah, I'll make a note of that right now, actually.
Right.
Yeah, I'll have a folder specifically for PowerPoints that you all could access. So one thing that I do highly recommend is that in your free time, in your spare time, if you can make the time, look into things that pique your interest, ways to further your development and understanding, just basically doing some like additional studying on the side, especially in an area that might interest you more than other areas, because DevOps does have a lot of fluidity in where it can take you. There's a conference every year called DevOps Days. It happens, I think, internationally, not just in cities in America, but even in cities in other countries. It just happened here in Chicago a few weeks ago. There's going to be a few more events at the end of the year. I think there's going to be one in Seattle. There may be one in Colorado. So if you're interested, look up DevOps Days, learn about it. You could watch some videos about previous DevOps Days conferences. And if you happen to live by one where it's coming up, consider attending. Here at DevOps Days, you really get to see behind the scenes how critical the philosophy and the culture is to the role. More so than a typical software engineering role, DevOps essentially has a bit of leadership built into it, because of the vast range of knowledge and specialties that it covers. With that said, we are going to move into JavaScript, and we are going to start the software engineering portion of the curriculum, where you will be learning both JavaScript and Python and complex skills necessary to essentially understand, write, and troubleshoot code. So with JavaScript, or I should actually say, why JavaScript and why Python? Popularity has led to these two languages being industry standards. So as industry standards, these are widely used. Learning these languages will improve your chances of landing a job, as these languages are highly in demand. And we could see here, as time has moved over the past few decades, the natural evolution of these various languages is there's a bit of like, I guess, Darwinism at play here. The languages that survive in the end are the ones that prove to be the most popular and accessible. And really, once you're at that point where you're not only very popular, but widely used, it becomes very difficult to upend you as a leader in that market or in that business. So Python, JavaScript, these are not going to be going away anytime soon. You can rest assured that learning these languages will give you a very much in-demand skill set for the foreseeable future. To start, just like with basically any programming language, JavaScript code structure consists of statements and expressions, which are pretty much the basic building block of code. Individual lines can be thought of as statements, and statements can exist within statements, like CD, documents, double ampersand, ls-lah. Is it one statement or is it two? It doesn't really matter. Statements and expressions are the semantic terms we use to describe the code. Don't overthink them, but also be able to rely on them and understand them, because these are the kind of practices you're going to want to start putting into play every day to improve your skills and your ability to communicate as a programmer and as a developer. Characters are even more basic than expressions. They're essentially what make up expressions. They could be alphabetical, they could be numerical, and they could be special, which includes operators, punctuation marks, etc. Data types would include strings and numbers and Booleans. I'm sure you're already familiar with a lot of these, but just to go over what they are in JavaScript, data types will have, by their very nature, different functionality. So as you're troubleshooting code, as you're writing code, be mindful of the data types that you are utilizing. If you type, let's say, some kind of expression like x equals 0, that's different from x equals quotation 0 quotation, because a string and a number are different data types. If you try to equate the two, you'll generally be given a false Boolean in return. And I'll demo some of these live in console after this slide deck, so we could actually see live and firsthand how some of these different data types work. Like I just mentioned, Booleans are basically true or false values. And then there are also variables and characters that may have no values explicitly, like a null. This could be used programmatically in situations where you may expect that a query, for example, might not return any data at a certain time. So in order to avoid running into an error, you build into your application the functionality to expect a null data type.
What is the use case difference between an undefined value and a null value? Like, I kind of understand the difference of what they are, but like using them wise.
Sure. Let's say you may not be expecting data at a certain point in time when you're, I don't know, maybe running a scheduled query, but you are at some point expecting data. This is where an undefined variable makes a little more sense. It can either have no value, or it can have a value later on and be replaced by that, and this will prevent the application from throwing an error. Or if you know specifically that you don't want to expect a value at all, you use null in that instance. Yes, basically similar to what Robert is saying inside the chat. Operators are used to manipulate expressions, and these include arithmetic and logical operators. And this is actually probably a good time to switch gears and actually hop into a console so we could see some of these operators in action live. So let me pull up my terminal. And while I'm doing all that, let me know if anybody else has any other questions. Don't want that one. Okay, I want to share this one. Right, what am I sharing? Sharing, I'm not sharing the right thing. Okay, there we go. Let's just make a file. Let's get out of there. What is it, day 2? Or actually, I don't mean week 2. I mean doing this to remove the folder I just created because I typed the wrong thing. And what I really wanted to make was this folder. So let's hop into actually make a JavaScript file. And switch gears here. I've got so many windows. Let's actually just go straight from the terminal. Let's stop there. Let me know if my text is too small. But here we are inside of Node. We are using this to essentially run JavaScript commands. And we are going to, let's say, do certain things like let message equal hello world. And this is a string. If we were to do something along the lines of v1 equals 0, v2 equals 0, but as a string, let's see what happens if we ask if v1 equals v2. We could see that right now we're receiving a true. But if we were to, let's say, try adding, let's see, v1 plus v1 equals v2 plus v2. That's interesting. I thought it would have returned a false. Okay, so I think in JavaScript, you are able to add integers and strings. And that's returning a string. So the functionality is built in that we're getting this integer converted into a string when we use arithmetic operators. This is not the case in all languages. If we were to switch to Python or to Ruby, this may not be the same behavior that we exhibit. So it's important to be mindful not only of the data types that you're working with, but the relationships between these data types and operators in whatever language you are writing in. Okay, let's go over Booleans again. We have, let's say, let Boolean equals false. Type Boolean, it's a false value. Let's see what happens if we run Boolean with the exclamation point operator. It basically returns the opposite because what this bang symbol indicates is the negative or the inverse. So the inverse of a true value is a false value and vice versa. Let's see, what else should we look into? Maybe arrays and objects. We definitely want to understand the difference between arrays, and arrays are essentially lists of multiple objects. So let's say let array equal, and array will now be this object, or sorry, this, let's say, data type containing 3 different values. And we can run some built-in commands such as Array.Length to retrieve the length of this specific array. Objects or dictionaries in some languages are similar, but the difference is these are indexed. These, or sorry, I should say these are not indexed. Arrays are indexed, but objects are not. Instead, objects have key value pairs. So in order for something to exist within a dictionary or an object in JavaScript, there has to be both a key and a value. And the syntax for this is typically, let's say, some kind of a name like ID with a colon separating it to associate value to the key. So in this case, let's just say the ID is 0, and we close that, and now we have an object. And let's actually have that equal to a variable. Object in this case is the variable, and the value that I'm assigning to this variable is in the syntax of an object. So what that does is it creates an object for the object variable. Any questions so far? Cool. Yeah, this is all pretty basic stuff. I think, did you guys actually go through an introductory course prior to this? I think it's called Fundamentals of Programming. Okay. I know it's something that Platoon has had students go through in the past, but I think yesterday when I asked you about the if you had gone through the GitHub classes and y'all had said no, I'm guessing
We had pre-work, but the thing you're talking about that's primarily done in JavaScript, that was not necessarily, it was an option, but it wasn't necessarily something asked of us.
Oh, okay, so it was optional, and I'm guessing nobody went ahead and did that.
I have, but I did. I'm familiar. I've done it.
Okay, all right, good to know. Let's see.
For the prerequisites, we mainly just focus on Python. That was pretty much, we focused on that in AWS.
So you still had the fundamentals down then. You still had in Python some experience going over different data types, and I'm guessing operators. Oh yeah, actually, very good comment there, Edwin. Let's go back to that very first example I was doing. So yes, Edwin pointed out in the chat that if we use the triple equal sign, this returns a false, whereas using the 2 equal signs was returning a true. I am blanking on the name of these operators, but it's essentially the behavior of if and only if.
Strict equality.
Yeah, strict equality. There you go. Yes, loose equality versus strict equality. Awesome. Okay, so it looks like you guys are somewhat familiar with all of this. That's good. We could maybe move on then to today's exercise. And I had created, what is it called? me see where I'm at. I'm gonna clone this fresh, actually, just so I can show you the process for git cloning again. First, I'm just gonna share my whole window. Share the entire. Okay. So I'm gonna hop into our curriculum. I'm gonna navigate down to software engineering. We are on our first day. And we had just gone over pretty much all of this. You could read about it on your you could read about it on your own a little more later on. And we are going to dive right into the first exercise. So this is a very basic troubleshooting application. You're going to copy this URL. If you hit this button, you don't have to worry about missing anything if you're just highlighting versus highlighting and hitting Command C or Control C. So use this button. It's there for your benefit. Once you have that, you just go back to your terminal. I do not want to be debugging. Let's clear this out. Am I in the right directory? I'm gonna just git clone this URL, and this is going to create a local clone of this fork, or not fork, this repository. I'll talk to Chandra or Adam about enabling forking. We won't worry about it for now, but it would be good muscle memory to allow you all the ability to fork. And forking will just give you another layer of control over your data. It's basically another layer of version control. And it might seem strange now to have so many layers of version control in place. Like, why do we have forks when we have clones? It's not easy to put into words, but the more layers of complexity there is to version control, the more flexibility you ultimately have in resolving change conflicts and things of that nature. It's something that you'll pick up with more experience. It's a little tedious now, yes, but stick with it. The more you stick with it, the more muscle memory you'll be building, and the better it will be for you in the long run. So I have cloned this repository. If I were doing ls, I could see my directory here. Let me move into my directory, and now if I do another ls, I could see all of these files. And now I can even open up the README, which is in Markdown. If you're not familiar with Markdown, it is basically a very basic text file with some additional functionality like syntaxing and HTML implementation. So what you see on any GitHub page is basically always the README. And by opening it up in my own terminal, I could edit it, and I could also preview it and view the README from the comfort of Visual Studio Code. So this repo will walk through not only the exercise, which is basically, well, here's a brief description of what this is. It's an application that is a simple command line application for simulating APIs and API functionality. I'll be expanding on this as the curriculum progresses, adding functionality to this exercise so that we can use this as a way to troubleshoot and exercise our troubleshooting skills. But for this very iteration, we basically have a simple interface that gives you a few commands. So I could even run it right now in my terminal. And it's returning a prompt. And from this prompt, I can return a response, and it will behave accordingly. It's telling me what's essentially in the README. That's a very basic app. And if I hit 2, I see that there is a failure. So the challenge for this exercise is to troubleshoot the application, read through the code and find what is broken. And once you are able to resolve what is broken, run your app inside your terminal and make sure it works. So once you change your code and it works and it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is returning a batch object as opposed to an error, then you will run through the rest of the exercise, which is creating a commit. And you do this by using git add, git commit, and then git push. And all of that is going to be inside the instructions. So we have in the first half, a description of this repository, description of how to use the application, which will expand as time goes on, and basically the GitHub workflow. We've already started with step 1, where we copied the code and cloned it to our local machines. And we did step 2, where we changed directory into the root directory. I did skip this step, but actually I'll show you right now what this is. If I run a git, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Is this repo like private? Because I'm trying to clone it and it's asking for my username and password.
Okay.
But I can clone other repositories without doing that, so I don't know why.
Oh, I see. Are maybe by default they're not made private. Yeah, let me unprivate this then. So
I was able to clone it.
oh, you were able to clone it. That's weird.
Yeah, I also cloned it down.
Yeah.
Going with
Even if it's private, as long as
SSH or
we're
HTTPS.
adding, good.
Sorry, we had some overlapping dialogue there. What was that? I think Nick, that was you.
Are you calling with HTTPS or SSH?
HTTPS.
Try it with SSH.
Okay. And Chad, what were you saying?
Nick got it. He's on it.
Right on. Awesome. Okay, let me know.
Okay, that's weird. It worked with SSH. I don't know why it didn't work without.
Yeah, I'm not so sure, but I think it just has something to do with how the Platoon organization's privacy settings are configured. The repo itself, I can't remember my password right now, so I can't hop in there. The repo itself, if there were any more issues, I'll just grab my password and I'll use this part of the GUI to allow additional access to anybody that still can't get in. So just let me know if you still can't get in. But I think, Robert, you said you were just able to get in.
Yeah, it's good now.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So let's see. That's going to be the exercise. Yeah, just run through the README, follow these steps, do things like get status to see what branch you're currently on. I see that I'm currently on main, so I could then use this git checkout command to move on to my own branch, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, once you're finished, make your pull request by running through the Git workflow, which is adding, committing, and pushing. And once you're done, you could actually just go ahead and move on to the next challenge. There are 2 more challenges today. It's going to be this and 99 bottles and linear search. Any questions?
Are we just gonna be plugging along for the rest of the night in breakout rooms, or how's the workflow gonna go?
Okay, very good question. For this first part, the GitHub portion, let's just have that be solo. I will open up breakout rooms and actually have you work in pairs actually, yeah, you could go ahead and work in pairs for all of the challenges, including the GitHub one. You'll still want to run through it on your own individually, but feel free to use the breakout rooms to assist one another, ask questions, etc. If you both have if both of you in a breakout room have more questions, then you can ping either Nick or me, and we will hop in. And let's see. We will, let's reconvene either at 8:30, or if you all finish all 3 challenges sooner, just hop back into the main room. Once everybody is back in the main room, they'll indicate to me that everyone's done, and we could just jump right into wrapping up. When we wrap up, I just want to go over the challenges, have a few people demonstrate their solutions live, and yeah, that'll be about it for the day. How's that sound? Cool. I'm going to open up some rooms, and feel free to take a break in the meantime.